Hey everybody, I'm Dirty Dan. Welcome back to Greasy Boy Customs. Today, we have a cool little treat that just came in. Let me show you what we got. 1957 Ford SKYLINER hardtop convertible Fairlane 500. And look at that, even got the Continental kit on the back. So the plan here is we're going to get this thing running, and then we're going to give it a good look over and make sure of what it needs: brakes, steering, suspension, things of that matter. As I said, this thing came in for a no-start issue. The brakes were locked up. The customer was able to get the brakes freed up on the front so it could be rolled onto the hauler a little bit easier and transported. New tires on it because the old ones were junk. And then we're going to be figuring out what's going on with the ignition. So let's go ahead and dive over to the ignition and see what we have and don't have. You'll notice something a little strange on these that you don't see on all cars, but a ballast on the ignition. Now, we did confirm that we do have our voltage at the coil, and we also confirmed that the point gap is correct. However, the points are a little dirty, so we're going to clean up the points a little bit. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with points, just a quick lesson here. These are your point contacts right here, and you see this cam and that pointer. As this turns, you can see they open and close. And that is what is going to fire. That opens and closes the ground, and that's what's going to fire your coil. You need to make sure these contacts are clean, and they also need to be set. Some people like to set them with feeler gauges. Some people just use a business card, because I think it's around 10 thousandths. It's a good area to get started. So we're going to go ahead and get these contacts cleaned up, and then we're going to see if we can get our coil to fire. And hopefully everything will be good. We did confirm that when we pump, we do have fuel going in there. The fuel's a little gross, but should be good enough to fire the engine. So let's get those cleaned up and see what we can do. Now we've got the wire hooked up. Unfortunately, our choke is open right now because we've had power to it. Let's take power off of it for a second. But give it a couple pumps, see if it'll fire. Look at that. The carburetor is having several issues. Aside from leaking and the accelerator pump failing, we can rebuild this carburetor, but if you price out the rebuild kit and the amount of labor involved, it's honestly cheaper just to replace this carburetor. So we're going to go ahead and replace it with a new unit or a reman unit. We're going to be removing this distributor and the coil and the plugs and wires and swapping it out for a new electronic ignition setup and eliminating the points. Some die-hard fans love their points. Some don't. We're going to update this so it's less maintenance, a little more worry-free for our customer. Now, when selecting the distributor, you do need to make sure whether your shaft on the bottom that connects to your oil pump is a hex drive or if it's a flat blade. Because we don't know the year model of this engine and exactly what it came out of, we're going to pull the distributor and double check that before we order our part. These Y-block engines are pretty unique looking. You do have valve covers with 2 bolts that hold them down, not a bunch of bolts around the perimeter. Sometimes they have problems with leaking, but usually you can resolve it. You can also see the distributors at the back. I had a lot of people mistake mine and my 46 Ford truck that I built, the chop truck, for a small block Chevy because the distributor was at the back. I do like the distributors at the front though, I will say that. In my truck it wasn't bad because it was easy to get to. This though, just getting to the distributor bolt, kind of a pain. But we got the bolt off, we got all the wires and stuff disconnected. The distributor's a little tight, but not too bad. We've got the engine at top dead center before we remove this just to make it easier to install when we're done. And take a look at the bottom, hex drive. This really doesn't look too much different from a 302 distributor though, does it? Pretty close. Anyway, let's get a new one on the way. Quick little side note, North Carolina, we have these lovely critters called dirt daubers, or mud daubers to some people. And they find any orifice that's open in your vehicle, and they build a home in it. Don't leave that hole open. You'll find critters in there. Or you could drop something in there, which would be even worse. Well, unfortunately, the shipping on the distributor got delayed. We're going to go ahead and change out the radiator. Why not? Well, this is a pretty neat looking unit. Hookups for the transcooler lines. Your drain cock. Pretty nice looking. Let's hope it fits well. Let's get the other one out. We got the cooling system draining, and positive note, the antifreeze in here looks spectacular. I haven't seen any rust or any debris come out. it looks really good. So that's going to be awesome and hopefully save us a little bit of time. We are going to replace the rest of these hoses too, especially this little guy right here, the bypass hose that goes from the bottom of the intake to the water pump. That hose gets neglected. They're really not too bad to remove or install. It's just a piece of heater hose. You can cut it and you kind of fold it and shove it in there. I'll show you how to do that. I'm not a big fan of these flex hoses appearance wise, but they function just fine. We're going to try to locate some correct hoses for this, but if we can't, we'll go back with flex hoses. We will put new ones on just because we want to make sure we're not putting any hoses that are possibly cracked or dry rotted and cause a problem down the road. We're trying to make this as reliable as possible. The radiator's about done draining. We're going to pop the bottom hose off, get this thing out. There we go. Nice new aluminum radiator. Now on to our distributor. Now we went ahead and dropped it in because there's really nothing special about that. Pretty easy hookup on this thing. Not too many wires. Comes with all the information you need in the wiring. We'll show you that in a second. But one precaution I do want to show you on this car in particular is got a little bit of a clearance issue right here. You see how close that terminal is to there? We'll either need to bend this up a little bit or we'll need to notch it out a little bit so it clears. We'll make that call in just a little bit, but let me show you what came with the kit. It does come with this 12-volt coil. This looks identical to what you would find in a Chevy HEI distributor. It comes with this housing you can mount it in, and then it comes with your hardware as well. Now we opted for the red spark plug wires, and in this box you'll see you have your wiring diagram. Pretty simple. You have your harness. Go ahead and run the wires. We have the distributor in place. We don't have it clamped down. We just have it in. We're going to run our wires nice and neat. We already got those new plugs in there and the gaps set where we want them. And then we're going to start doing some wiring. And we need to figure out a place to mount that coil. We'll probably try to mount it on the intake, but it's going to be more or less trial and error, move it around and see what works best. I forgot to film the outro segment while I was out there working on the car, so I've got my assistant here doing nothing as usual, and join us for the next video. We're going to be doing some more cool work on this Fairlane. We're going to be doing the brakes on it. We're going to be swapping out the carburetor. We're going to be converting it over to a dual bolt master cylinder and addressing an axle seal leak in the rear. So stay tuned, and if you have any questions about anything we did today or any of the products we use, feel free to comment below or message us at greasyboycustoms@gmail.com. Till next time, happy hot rodding.